So today our session is on the fascinating topic of non-chord tones, also known as non-harmonic tones, also known as embellishing tones. So if you start searching them in a dictionary or an encyclopedia, you actually need to search under all of those terms because it can show up in any of those. And these are extremely important tones in terms of making memorable melodies. Back to our discussion from the first day. And these are things that you can still add to parts of your piece, provided you know how they work and when you can use them. Make sense so far? And so I'm going to first share this PDF. And I'll share sound so I know I'm sharing sound. These handouts will be available in the Google Drive folder. So if you want to print them out or put them on your computer, you'll be able to do that. Okay. Now, the most common run-of-the-mill ordinary, you almost don't notice it's a non-harmonic tone, is the passing tone. And the passing tone fills in a gap between two notes. So you start on a note, you have a gap, and then you go to another note, a different note. That's the important thing. They can go up, they can go down, they can be diatonic, meaning part of the scale. So the one that they're showing here, and I'm going to make this bigger so it's easier to see. So they've circled the passing tone there that fills in the interval of a third from G to E. So if you look at your pieces, and you notice anywhere in your pieces that you have a skip, you can put in a passing tone to see if you like it. Does that make sense? And I'm often suggesting these. Now, the ones like this one here is diatonic, and it's also on a weak beat. You all know that beat 1 is a strong beat, beat 3 is not as strong as 1, right? And if you're in 4/4 doing quarter notes, it'd be 2 and 4 would be unaccented passing tones. But passing tones can be accented, and when they are, meaning on a strong beat like the downbeat, when they are, they have way more emotional impact than when they are off the beat like this. And they can fill in the interval of a third, but they can also fill in the interval of a major second because you can have a chromatic passing tone. So if you have a bass line or something that's, you're going from C to D, and you're like, I want another note in there. Well, you can put in a C sharp between the C and the D. And of course, these are all things to try. And the nice thing about our notation software is you can try that, put it in and go, ick, or, oh, I love it. That gives my thing more character. Does that make sense? So far we have the run-of-the-mill ordinary non-chord embellishing non-harmonic tone called the, thank you, Anthony. You're so good. Okay. The next one, now this is one people don't think of as often, but it's a really good one. It's the neighbor tone. And the way this one works, you start on a note, you end on the note you started on, and you either go up a note or down a note. And here again, just like the passing tone, it can be diatonic, meaning in your scale, or chromatic. And it can be accented or unaccented. These ones here again are unaccented. Does that make sense? Now, when would you use these? I gave you hints on the passing tone when you can use them. When is the best time to use a neighbor tone? If you have a long note that you want to spice it up, you can add a neighbor tone or even a trill above or below. What's the most famous chromatic lower neighbor tone song on the planet? For Elise. Yes. And if Beethoven had not put in those chromatic lower neighbor tones and it was just we would not know the tune. This is the kind of detail that music theorists go, oh, that's not functional, that's not important. And composers go, that's the sensuous surface. I need to make sure that I'm dealing with that because that's what's going to draw people in and hook them in. So if you have a long note that you want to spice it up, you can do this. The other thing is, like with the canon we were working on, and we wanted an A for one note, and then 2 notes later we still needed the A. Well, then what do we do in between? We do a neighbor tone up or down, and we can try both. I always recommend, don't just try one and go, oh, that's cool. Try them both, because you might say, oh, that's cool, and then, oh my God, that one is great. So try more than one thing. Make sense so far? Okay, then we get to the most expressive of the non-harmonic tones, the suspension. And the suspension, you can see it here. The suspension, oh, and Stephen got in, yes, okay. The suspension has 3 parts, and this is just true for the suspension. You have a preparation on a weak beat. And the preparation is a note that is a chord tone at that point. Then you tie that note across the bar line or over to a strong beat. So it could be tied over from beat 2 to beat 3, or beat 3 to beat 1, or beat 4 to beat 1, or repeated, because it doesn't have to be tied. It could be repeated. But at that point, when it's repeated on the strong beat, it is dissonant. And then it resolves downward by steps. So there's the preparation, the suspension, and the resolution. And this is a cool thing to do. You just delay your resolution. So here, the composer in this one, from measure 5 to measure 6, could have gone directly to the B, right? Because the B is a chord tone. But it's so much more beautiful if you hold the C over and then resolve it. Does that make sense? And there is a thing known as a suspension chain. Now, the way suspension chains work is if you have parallel thirds, you have one of the voices move down to the 4th first, the other one suspend and then resolve, and then the lower one goes down, the upper one holds and then goes down. You can also do this with what other intervals? So parallel thirds going down is the important thing. What would be the other interval you could do a suspension chain with? And these show up in the repertoire all over the place because they are so cool. Can you guess? What's the other interval you can do in parallel motion? You can do a whole bunch of them. Can you do fifths in parallel motion? Not in common practice period harmony. Of course, you can in other styles, right? Can you do parallel seconds? Parallel sevenths? Parallel fourths? What did I leave out? Sixths. Because the 2 suspensions that are used all the time, most common ones, are the 4-3 suspension, as this one is, and the 7-6 suspension. Now there is, I don't think they put it on here. Nope, they didn't. If the suspension resolves upward by step instead of down, it has a special name. It's called a retardation. I do not know why. But it's, yes. And that's what it even says on here. And this will go in the Google Drive. Now, the next one, anybody in here, almost all of you are pianists except for Anthony. If you've played Chopin, you have played appoggiaturas galore. The appoggiatura functions a lot like the suspension, except you don't have the preparation. So you leap to the dissonant tone. The dissonant tone is on a strong beat, and then you resolve it downward in the opposite direction. So here they show us an appoggiatura where you leap up and you resolve down. But you can also do appoggiaturas where you leap down and resolve up. Does that make sense? So where would you use an appoggiatura in your music? Because I'm all about, we got to apply this stuff, right? Stephen, and unmute so Trisha can hear you.
Just like in general, for using a partitura? They're asking. There's like won't be a good time to use it in general.
Yeah, when would you be able to use it?
It would it can act as a melodic bridge between the two keys. I guess if you are, I don't know, let's say that this partitura you have right here in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell. Is there two notes above the whole note, or is there just an F?
That's a half note that's circled because they circle the appoggiatura.
Let's say that appoggiatura is in front of like a background key, like a key of C major.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It would be convenient to have that there if you had, I don't know, before that G, I don't know, G7 chord. If that makes sense.
Mean in this position here?
Yes.
A G7 chord.
In like root position.
What's the soprano note? Because that's what matters. F. Okay.
You can basically drag out what you had earlier, and it acts and it's a little bit more subversive of expectation instead of just da da. You go da.
That's a suspension because you held the note across.
Or da da da.
That's still a suspension because you can do the repeated note. The appoggiatura is a leap.
Oh, how about
Then yes. And the place that you use it is if your melody is going up, you can leap to the note above the note you're planning on going to. And would it be, which would be the most expressive, the ones with a large leap or a small leap? Large, yes, yes. And you always step back in the other direction. How many of you have read This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin? Why do I remember his name? I do not know. Because he's talking about all sorts of music in there, and even rock and roll music. If you leap in one direction, you fill it back in. So you come the other direction. So that's a kind of cool thing. And when you're wondering about how to remember how to spell appoggiatura, 2 P's, 2 G's. Just say that to yourself. Appoggiatura, 2 P's, 2 G's. Okay? Now, the anticipation. So this is a weak beat thing. And then you go to a dissonant note on the weak beat that is consonant in the next measure. So you anticipate the resolution. Does that make sense? And looking at it, does it make sense? When would this happen, Alex? You have a question? Or
no, I'm just looking at something on the news for about
it might be the appoggiatura as a grace note sort of thing. Yeah, it has weird things on MuseScore about these ornamental tones. These are composed ones. These are not putting in the little notes. Okay. Yeah. So would you expect to see an anticipation in the beginning of a piece, in the middle of a phrase, at the end of the phrase? Where would you expect this?
Towards the end of the phrase, maybe?
Very good, Trisha. Yes, the end of the phrase. Or the end of the piece. Ba, da, da. You've heard that a zillion times, right? And if you're going from re to do, which you might be at the end of the piece, right? The do doesn't go with the 5 chord. So it is dissonant with the underlying harmony. And then they have one more, the escape tone. Yes, and these are all of them. The escape tone is weird. It is the only non-harmonic tone that does not resolve by step. And at first I thought, this is a really weird one. Who would ever want to use it? And then I was composing examples of non-harmonic tones, and I found I use them a lot. So it's kind of a cool thing. So this is a thing you can use when you're going to a note That's one direction, but you go up before you go there, or you go down before you go up a jump, but you're going to a dissonant note. And here they're showing it to you in two-part counterpoint. So E to D is what interval? E up to D. See, from right here up to right here. Seventh. Yeah. And we'd sort of go, oh, I expect to go back to C, but no, it goes to A. Kind of crazy, huh? So I thought you'd like to see this one first because you see the musical notation, right? But then I also created a, come on, show me, here, my own, I'm forever charts. Have you figured that out about me yet? Creating boxes that I fill in. So what I do here is I say the name of it, and sometimes they have more than one name. The appoggiatura is sometimes called an incomplete neighbor tone. And then how it's approached, what direction it goes, and how it resolves. So the appoggiatura is approached by leap, resolves in the opposite direction, and the appoggiatura itself occurs on a strong beat. The anticipation is a repeated note anticipated by a note that goes well with the following chord, but not the current chord. And the anticipation is on a weak beat. The resolution is on the strong beat, right? Escape tone can be approached by leap or step, but it resolves by leap, and it occurs on a weak beat. The strong beat ones are the most expressive ones, right? So passing tone, approached by step, resolves in the same direction by step, fills in a third or a major second. Sometimes it fills in a fourth because they'll put in two passing tones. You can do that. So like if you have a bass line that's going from C up to F, you can fill it in with D and E. Okay, so there can be more than one. And it can be on a strong or a weak beat, just like the neighbor tone. The neighbor tone and the passing tone are very similar, except the passing tone changes from the first pitch and the neighbor tone stays the same. So does this all make sense? And I will put all of these into the Google Drive. Questions? Nobody has questions. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make some up. How does that sound? Here I am in C major. That's kind of cool, right? And I'm going to put, oh, I'm going to make that one. Okay. So right now I have a 10th resolving to a 6th. It's an octave. I just leave that out, right? Which of the non-harmonic tones could I use? Well, actually, we can do not all of them. We can very easily do that. What's that? Passing tone. Yes. I can't do a neighbor tone because I'm not starting and ending on the same pitch, can I? Can I do a suspension? Not really, right? Could I do an appoggiatura?
Yes.
Yes. And that would be, which note would I alter, the E or the G?
Wait, sorry?
Which note would I change, the E or the G? If to do an appoggiatura?
To do an image where you would have to add it between the two.
Ah,
Yeah,
so I have to change.
I was
I
thinking
could
leap up to A and then resolve to G.
Very good, Trisha. Yes. I'm going to do this and then I'll go like this. So here is an appoggiatura.
And then it would be good if you moved for the next one, the next measure, you make an A in the base and a higher C. Yes. So now you have like a walking baseline of it.
I have a walking baseline and I have contrary motion, right? But now I have, this is totally consonant here. So is there a non-harmonic tone I could use here? I'm just trying to get your brains really thinking.
You could go back down to a G
Back down to a G where?
after the C. You made like a half note.
Go down to the G and it's dissonant. Therefore, the G would be a well, the G is dissonant with the A, correct?
Yes. It's 7. Clear motion.
And so this is a dissonance on a weak beat, right? It's not a passing tone. It's not a neighbor tone. It's not a suspension. What could it be? Well, it's not, it's jumping away from it that makes an escape tone. Are we going to keep going down by step?
I was thinking the next one would be a higher D.
See, if it's this G, if we want this to be an escape tone, what do we go to here?
Sure.
That would be resolving it by step. Escape tones resolve by leap.
A high D. You leave that out.
You could go to D. What would be probably nicer sounding? Yeah, that's an escape tone. Right? Could we delay this resolving tone?
I mean, you could do another appoggiatura, but then you do the C again.
Well, let's hear it. It's actually kind of nice because the first C is consonant and the second one is dissonant. Right? Now, we did this leap here. Were there other possibilities? Going back here. Am I recording? I hope. I am. I believe I am. I'm going to check and make sure.
Yeah, you've got the little dot.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Could I do a suspension here? This is a 7th. Guess what this is? A suspension chain. Do you remember I talked about those? And you could keep that going if you wanted to. So when you have a bass line going down, it's kind of cool to do something like that, right? Which ones haven't we done? We did a posture. We haven't done a neighbor tone. And if we keep going, why not? So we could go like to D here, right? And it could be, let's just listen. Works. As I said, you always try them both. And I'll start here. And then we'll be a little crazy. Is that the coolest one? See, that's why you never pick the first one you try. You do ones that come later on. Is this giving you ideas for working with a piece? Your
Yes.
piece?
Yes.
Yes? Does anyone have questions about this? Because if not, we will work on the canon for 15 minutes.
I have a question. So what's the point of using an escape note? You know, what would it do?
Well, the function of using any of these chord tones or non-harmonic tones is that dissonance, I should have said this at the start. Thank you so much for asking, Trisha. Use of any dissonance propels your piece forwards. So if you have a piece and it's all consonant from beginning to end, the equivalent of that in a movie would be you go to the movie, you see the opening scene, it's a happy family, they're going about their day. They all go off to their work or school or running errands or doing athletics or something, and they come back at the end of the day and they tell each other all the happy things they've done all day and they go to bed. That would be the
Okay,
world's most boring movie,
that makes
right?
sense.
So we need dissonance. The thing with these is that you can use any of these. They are all workable. And the one that we think of as being kind of the most odd is when you leap from the dissonance at the end. But there are places for that. So when you do that, you can say, this isn't what normally happens, but I really like it. So the dissonance is what really propels things forward. How many of you have played the little minuet in G? Bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, bum, bum. And I'm going to put some of that right in here. I'm going to change my key signature to the key of G. And it was not written by Bach. It was written by Christian Petzold. Craziness, right? We have to be in 3 if we're going to do, I'm going to show you how this works. Quarter. Right. It's in this very first measure, you all know this piece, I assume, right? This was the first example we studied in Schenkerian analysis. And you see the dissonance here, the A and the B, right? And if you play this really slowly, like even at 80, I've had students come in and they play and they go, bum, beat up. because they're playing it so slowly that dissonance really bothers them a lot. But when you play it up to speed, you almost don't notice it. If you're playing it and you want to use this, what I call motor of dissonance, to move yourself forward, you actually lean into the dissonance, as opposed to those students who play it and go, oh, I'll play those really softly. Instead, you lean into it and you propel yourself to the second measure. Now, the interesting question is, which note is the dissonant one? This one or this one? Yes, why? Why isn't it the B that's a dissonant note? It's because the prevailing harmony here is the G chord. The A is the passing tone between the G and the B. The right hand has passing tones, but they are on A and C. So this is a chord tone. This one is not the dissonant tone. This one is the dissonant tone. This is the one you would mark passing tone. Okay? But it really, one of my colleagues calls these the juicy notes. And you want to really squeeze them for all they're worth. Other questions? That was a great question, Trisha. You helped me remember to cover everything I needed to. I appreciate it. No other questions in the room? Do you want this document here posted on the drive or just the other two? Yes, I will be putting both of those in the Google Drive later today, probably right after class, if that sounds good to everybody. Okay. So are you ready for the canon? Should I stop the recording here, Mary Kate, and not record the canon work?
That's up to you.
Okay, guys, you tell me. We could record it. It would be fine. So I have to open the other MuseScore. I have to be in full screen mode. This guy shrink. This guy. I got all these guys to shrink. This guy, shrink. Because I have not put, this is silly of me, I have not put the new MuseScore on my desktop yet. Heavens, do I have a lot of windows open? Yes, here it is. It's going on my taskbar after this, because I was doing this in MuseScore 4. And Mr. Guillaume is here, so now we really can work on the canon. And Trisha, have you seen any of this yet? Oh, I have to share it.
Yes, I saw it yesterday.
Oh, good. Because I thought we did some of it yesterday. Oh, I know what I need to do. Make this big. Then I will get to share screen. And JCI canon. And then we make it a little bigger and I move all you guys to the bottom. So I want to be here. Okay, so far we have, can you hear that, Trisha?
Yes.
Good. So last night we got Jacob Got Pranked by Colored Balloons. We only had Jacob Got, and there was our, what do we call the note on the Cub? He should root for the Cubs, shouldn't he? Jacob. He doesn't care about baseball. We found out he's a golfer, but what is it? Neighbor tone, because we start on the A, we go to the A. And that was the instance where we wanted the A and we really needed the A again because we liked the A. So we could either do the neighbor tone below or the neighbor tone above. And above is fine. Do you want to try below? Did we try below yesterday? No? Oh, well, let's try it just in case. Which is possible. Let's try this. You want to hear that again? You like that one better than the B, or you like the B better? Jacob got pranked. Jacob got pranked. Both of them sing. I don't sing very well this time of the morning.
I like how you have it.
Now, how many vote for the G sharp? 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess we're keeping it. And that means I have to copy this because the way the canon works, you have to constantly be making sure that everybody is singing the same thing. You know why a canon is called a canon? Does it go boom?
It's canonical.
It's canonical. What does canonical mean?
I don't know how to describe it. but
Yeah, so you don't know how to describe it yet, but you should.
I know canonical.
Canon is law or rule. And a canon is a piece written out as a single line that has a rule applied to it that makes it a polyphonic piece. And the simplest type of canon is the kind we are doing, which is called a round, where you just, and what you would do for this to be a single line is you would have an asterisk right here on the single line, and that would tell people that's where I come in with the next entry. But you would not see all three of them. It's nice for us to see and hear all three of them to work it out. There are other kinds of canon. Who knows other kinds of canon? There's a thing called the crab canon. And on a famous one, the rule was kind of a little joke because it was, my end is my beginning. So the crab canon, you go like this. So one person starts at the end and the other one starts at the beginning. The other thing you can do is have it so that a person reading it upside down reads it from their beginning to their end, while the person on the other side of the desk reads theirs, their normal way. I haven't ever written one of those. I have written a crab canon. And there's a thing called a mensuration canon, in which people are doing the canon based on the quarter note or the eighth note or the half note. And the people with the long values only get to go through it once. Anyway, what's our next sentence? Jacob got pranked by colored balloons. So what comes after Jacob got pranked by colored balloons? You don't have any input to this. You have to go right, go right.
We need to talk about the Culver's death.
Do we need the Culver's death march, or do we need William couldn't find a sandwich?
William's burger was drinking.
Or something about the draft?
Daisy lost Kevin. Oh yeah, the proposals, you gotta do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Will you make me the?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, make it into a sentence we can use.
Let's see. Make me the happiest.
And be my amanuensis.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's in, make me the happiest
Kim
composer
Kevin.
alive.
Kim proposes to Kevin.
I could propose to Sarah.
Okay. Kim proposes to dee, da.
Make me the happiest composer.
Amanuensis. Amanuensis. Should we,
Oh, I got it. Be my amanuensis and make me
Cruiser in the world.
alive.
be, so we want a long note that fits with this whole thing.
Like be my.
So we need a dotted half note. Be my, okay, so, and we don't have a dotted half note here. We're coming from F sharp. We have F sharp and A, correct? What can we have with F sharp and A?
C
C or
B.
B. We're going to try them all. So see, it continues the harmony we had before, correct?
Or be be my or be my. Be alternate. Ooh, that's pretty. I like it.
What about D? Well, and the B we might want to go up. Well,
Wait,
although,
what's the next bar look like in terms of what the other voices are doing?
good point. A and C, so we could have an E here, couldn't we? Let's try an E.
Oh, I know what you should do. You should add. You should make that the B. It should be a the B minor. That should be a D sharp and then an E. B minor.
Yes, that worked.
And also, it's a logical progression from where we class.
Yes,
So
B. We're working on the canon till,
it's time.
and is it time right now?
9:30 on the dot.
When does Kim start? At 9:30?
Supposedly.
I think it is.
Randall's one.
Oh, yes. So I have to stop. He can't get in until I stop.
Only
Thank you.